So I'd hoped to show you what I'm going to be doing on the twin cam 2013 FXDC Harley. There are plenty of off-the-shelf solutions for gauges for oil pressure. However, I didn't particularly like any of them. I certainly did not like the price of them. So this is a bit of a DIY. So what we've got here is we've got a oil-filled gauge. I will not be cutting the little doobie whacker off there, because basically, if you think about it, if this was in a car like that, you could easily cut the top off, because of course the oil is at the top and so is the little bubble. Of course, on the bike, it's actually going to be more upright like that. Of course, if you were then to cut that nipple off, then hey, guess presto, the oil will leak out of the oil pressure gauge and you'll have a mess. So I'm not going to do that. It means we might get some condensation, but there's not much I can do about that. So what you're seeing then is a converter from the thread for the gauge, converter to the elbow. Now, I'm in Australia, so things are metric to then to imperial, then imperial, then to metric. So I need this converter, but you may very well, if you're in the States or anywhere else, you may be able to get an elbow that goes straight in. It's a little bit neater, but this also brings it a little bit closer to the rider. That then goes into an elbow that goes onto this threaded rod. This threaded rod is hollow, as you hopefully can see there. So that will be cut around about there on the threaded tube there. So with that out of the way, what we do is we then use a flexible line. Now you might be thinking, hey chicken, shouldn't you be using some copper line like the one that you've got in your hand right there that you bought previously? Yes, I could. However, the problem is this is massive. There's a massive amount of it. And for how it's going to appear on the bike, I really only need about 1/2 meter or about 1.5 foot, maybe 2 feet. I don't know what it is in imperial, but 1/2 meter's worth. Now I'm going to protect it slightly by getting some of this, which is heat shrink, which fits over the top. It'll help it be stealthy as well. And if you're wondering, yes, I've got a bit of heat shrink as well for this area up here, so that will be stealthy as well. So it will be black along there and then into a brass fitting and then black on this as well. So I'm hoping that the heat shrink with this will be perfectly fine. Now on the engine currently there is a oil sender that goes directly up to the little red warning light on your Harley Davidson Speedo. And what I've done is I've bought myself a converter. This goes into the engine. The original Harley Davidson sender unit can go in the end here and off it toddles back off to the red unit. But of importance is it will then allow me to take this take off here and put the plastic into that, pull it all the way through and onto this area here.
The next morning.
So I thought what I'd do is show you what I've got so far with regards to the gauge, where it's going to go, and also the reason why I'm not going with the other way of doing it. So here is what I've got. I've made, as it were, or not made, it's of parts that you saw in the previous part. So as you can see, it looks a bit like a pipe at the moment, but it's almost in the place where I want it to be. And I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put some P clamps. I can't hold both the camera and the thing, but see where the little Allen bolts are for the covers for the push rods are? I'm going to put P clamps over the top of that so that that will sit exactly where I have it. This gauge is therefore viewable from the seat down through there like that. Now I've tested it out already with a couple of zip ties, etc. It works quite well, except if you are using a full face helmet. If you're using a full face helmet, it can be quite difficult to see the gauge because of course the chin bar's in the way. On an open face, no problem. But it's there so that I can monitor the oil. Now, there are kits available out there. I may have alluded to them previously. The main one that you see a lot of is one that bolts to these two bolts up here, comes out, nice little triangle, and there's a gauge facing you right there. Comes down through behind these areas here, down through and into a splitter down here. The reason I didn't do that is a couple of threefold, should I say. The first one is this engine shakes a lot. And at that point, the shaking is far greater than at this point. That's just centrifugal force or some physics. My brother would say it's natural physics. Now, that will ruin a gauge, first of all, and it will make it quite difficult for the gauge to be accurate. Yes, it's oil-filled, so it won't go completely insane, but still quite difficult to see. The second one is I have very fat legs, and as the leg comes out down through here, I suspect that my chubby legs will actually occlude the gauge, which defeats the purpose while you're riding anyway. And the third is purely down to cost. Because it's made by a bloke called Arlen Ness, or should I say the company founded by Arlen Ness, it's quite expensive, and I just didn't want to spend that sort of money. So I've taken out the oil sender unit that is currently there. There is the sender unit that it plugs into that. That will still be there. That'll still work on the Speedo. For those who are following along, if you want to know how big that that sender unit is, I'll just get it is a 15/16. And as you can see, I just got a king chrome here. I left it on the wobble so it was as far out as possible, and that made it perfect. It wasn't in very tight because, of course, it's a tapered thread, so be careful when you're doing that sort of thing. So far, I've got this set up, which is nice and simple. This bit's the simple bit. The difficult bit is the area down here. Or should I say it's not difficult, it's one area that I don't want leaks to have happen, etc.
A few moments later.
The gauge installer is now in. As you can see, hopefully with all the lights are now on, it's rooted all the way through. If you're wondering about the distance between the exhaust and the line, there's at least that amount of room. And that doesn't help you because I might have childlike fingers, but let's say that's about an inch and a little bit. So I'm not too worried about that now. I was worried about it. What I am a little bit concerned about, is these P-clamps. They're a bit too big, and there's a bit of movement there. And as you may or may not know, Harley-Davidsons shake a lot. So other than that, I will test it tomorrow. I'm not a big fan of, I've got Loctite drying in there, and I've got, and obviously thread lock stuff all drying. I'm not a big fan of putting a heat through it immediately. I'll let it dry overnight. We'll start it tomorrow. So in the meantime, the other piece of lubrication is now required. Oh yeah, this is going to be good. Oh yes. They're going to put a law against that one day.
Tomorrow.
As you may or may not be able to hear, I've had the bike already started so that I could check for oil leaks. Good news, no oil leaks. One issue, and another one that I've found some stuff at our local hardware store. I bought it outside so you could actually see it a little bit better. I've had a look at the footage I took from inside the garage. It's a bit dark, so I just thought I'd have a look at it. So here is the gauge in its beauty, etc. And as you can see, it comes along. Let's get this right. I got this wrong last time. Let's have a look. It comes up. You can see the line. Comes through. And then down onto the takeoff. Now, yes, she is hot. I haven't taken her for a ride yet. As you can see, the line is very far away from the exhaust. Now, I did make mention of two issues, and the first issue is that these P-clamps here, they're too big, and so this gauge can move this way like that. Ow! Don't put your hand on the exhaust. It can move. Now, I've got some smaller ones now. I went to the hardware store and got some smaller ones. So I will probably be installing those sooner rather than later. The other thing that I've done is I went at the same hardware store. I found some heat flame retardant wrap for wires, electrical wires, and I got some that fits this exactly. And it's a sheath, and I'm going to put it over the top. I don't think it needs it. It's not too bad, but it's quite hot in there. So I do want to make sure of that. But otherwise, it all works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the engine up, and we'll just have a look at this. Remember, this is from a warm start. Let's make sure I'm on the gauge. So job done, I think.